Good afternoon, traders. Welcome back. Howard here with our trading mindset coach, the person who comes in to bring some sanity to what can be an insane world of trading. Agnieszka Wood, how are you doing today, Agnieszka?
Hopefully sanity. I'm doing well, Howard. Nice to see
I
you.
am great. We talked a little bit before we came on. It's just a crazy time, news everywhere, weather conditions all around the globe, everything's sort of in
Right.
mayhem. I was telling you about my trip driving to DC and back through snow and ice storms that were crazy. I could actually take it a little bit into the world of trading if I could. And I was telling you, I was in an ice storm, and you had people that just were not playing the market in front of them. We tell people here at Quasar, right, all the time, you can't always be a perma bear. You can't always be a perma bull. You've got to be smart. I was my philosophy was I'm staying in the middle lane and I'm going, what I feel comfortable going. And what I was doing was judging traffic behind me, in front of me, and sort of staying in between it. You had people by the right and the left going by me. I would say the right lane was the perma bears, the left lane was the perma bulls, and inevitably I saw like 30 crash outs.
Yeah,
It really was a metaphor for our trading world.
that is so true. And it's brilliant metaphor actually, because you really see how people just do whatever they set themselves to do and do
Yeah, and,
not
and that's what I
adjust
was
to any
saying is,
conditions.
you could see it, and inevitably the market just turned on them, because what would happen, as I was saying, is, what would happen is usually the plows hadn't been by after a while, and the lanes would shrink, and it would shrink in on itself on the edges the most, and someone on the
Right.
right lane's right tires would hit a big patch of slush or snow. They'd spin out. Same thing on the left even worse, because number one, they're going faster. Number two, I was in the area of the country
Yeah.
where there isn't the Jersey barriers that I'm used to in New England to keep us safe. There's little pieces of rope in between the highway, and I saw 18 wheelers across both lanes. It was
Wow.
crazy. But, it goes to, like I said, playing the hand in front of you and, having some outward looking views. And I think it leads into what I asked you to talk about today. And I'm going to bring up here your podcasts. I do
Mhm.
love them. I've listened to most of them. I won't say all of them,
Thank you.
most of them.
It's a lot, I have to say.
Yeah,
I've been,
40.
we are almost at the episode number 50, which is absolutely fantastic.
So
Um,
actually going to take a step back. If folks want to find Agnieszka, her website, and I will put it across the bottom here where you can find everything, is www.aheadcoach.com. And from there, she has so much great information. She has free programs and things you can get, emails, be part of her newsletter and other things, but also these podcasts that I've found to be great, especially when I'm driving. 20 minutes, they hit that nice time where it's not too long, not too short for me. If I'm heading to the stores or whatever, I like it. And I wanted to talk about going into what we just said, overcoming your trading blind spot. I spoke about the blind spots I saw in drivers over the weekend. I thought maybe we could talk a little bit about what a trading blind spot is, and how do we recognize it, and if you could talk a little bit about what you mean by that.
yeah, and actually, your analogy to driving is the very first blind spot is not taking the responsibility for your actions.
Yeah.
So really the short-sighted view and focusing on this is what I want right now, like jumping into a trade without the plan, seeing, okay, I can just quickly make money. And you would say, yeah, that's very good because this is what you are there set to do, make money. But now if you break all your rules, if you don't have a plan, it's like, what is that gonna do to you long term? Maybe you will make money now, but is this actually going to work in your favor long term, right? Because
Right.
you will be rewarded for your bad behavior. And then the next time you think, well, it worked last time, it should work now as well, right?
And we
So
talk about that a lot. Some of the worst things that can happen to a new trader is to incorrectly trade, incorrectly hold on to a position and have it turn in their favor, because then they feel I can trade my way out of anything. I'm just that good.
right. And then the next time it doesn't work, and then you try to prove yourself right, and you try to prove that actually you were right before, and that's it just takes you in downward spiral. the responsibility part is very closely connected to, and that's what I was talking about in that podcast episode, is very closely connected to um, something that holds a lot of people back from actually expanding their potential. It's the victim
Right.
approach, or I don't want to say personality, because it's a pattern that a lot of us grow up with, being a victim of the circumstances. And that's not something like, if you talk to someone, they will never say, yes, I'm a victim, right? But if you hear people talking, you will hear whether they put themselves in that position or whether they actually stand on the side of the cause and say, no, I am causing what is happening in my life. And, you know, a lot of times I get into this discussion with people like, oh, so you want to say that I'm causing everything that bad that's happening to me. Well, you're not causing everything that's bad that's happening to you, but you do have the responsibility and you do have the power how you react to it, right? You
Absolutely.
can, just like with the market.
Yeah, without a doubt, So I would have to ask first, what I would say in that victim role when you see people, I call it the cry wolves, right? They're the
I call
same
it the poor
people
me.
who, no, not at all, not at all. But the people who every day, Powell went and spoke. Well, guess what? There's a schedule of when he's going to speak. Oh, the housing data came out today and my position got destroyed. Well, guess what? Again, economic data, there's a calendar to it, and you should have the
Right.
proper setups and stop losses and things set up, right, to protect yourself. So number one, how do we find that within ourselves? Because what I was going to say, the second part, I don't even want to ask that question, is how do we point out to somebody when they have it? Because that's a whole separate question we'll get back to down the road when I want to lose my life with my wife or somebody else and want to have that argument. But how do we find that on our own? Because I do think it's important. And by the way, I want to say, hey, Ron, thanks for reaching out. And he says hello to you, Agnieszka. A couple comments.
Hello, Ron. Nice to have you here. Well, pretty much the same way as you would talk to someone else, and definitely do not point it out.
So I shouldn't go downstairs and interrupt my wife's meeting right now to tell her I've got an epiphany.
It might not be very effective.
Yeah, I can tell you it won't be a good idea.
But just asking yourself questions and really build that awareness of how do you talk, how do you speak to yourself. If something happens, like there is a report coming out and your explanation for your loss is, I didn't know. Well, the question is like, why didn't you know? Right. Like, if you are trading, that is something that you should know. And of course, if you say like, oh, I should have known. Yes, you should have known. You should have been prepared. So if you're saying, like, if you're pushing the responsibility and you say like, oh, your general approach is like, oh, these things are happening to me, then you are placing yourself in the victim role. What you also can look at is, if someone asks you how you're doing and you start telling about all these things that are happening and that they are bad, most likely you are putting yourself in that role because you are placing your attention on everything that's going bad for you, right? And then the next step before you know is like all these things are influencing you in a bad way, and then bad things happen to you. Absolutely. The reason why you like, do you journal? Oh no, I don't journal because I have so much work and I have no time and all this. Okay, do you meditate? No, because I've tried meditating and it just doesn't work for me. I'm like, then you start. I
call that one running into the same walls. I have that talk with my 4-year-old. Is Ella, we've been through this. If you grab the dog's tail, the dog's going to try to bite you. How many times are you going to grab the dog's tail today and tell me that the dog tried to snap at you?
Yeah, basically. And, like I grew up in that environment where that was just a pattern of, that my parents, my grandma, and everyone was like sort of playing along. So it's not always easy to see whether you are in that environment because it's just so normal for you, and these are the things that bring out in your own life, like really thinking about all these bad things that are happening to you, and this is the reason why you are as you are. Sometimes you will, just observe how you talk and how you present information to other people. If you find yourself saying, oh, I am just like that, oh, I'm like that because something happened to me 40 years ago and now I'm like that.
Right. Well,
That
it's
is
the people that I used to
very
hear
good
complain about
example.
Kramer, right, on CNBC. Oh, Kramer, he talked about stock X, Y, and Z, and he was completely wrong. Well, you've been saying that for 6 months. Why are you still listening to the guy?
Right, right,
And why are
right.
you not doing your own research, what everyone tells you? And one thing I do want to point out, give Quasar a little plug here, is all of that information that I said you should know is found on our platform. We have got all the economic calendars, all the earnings reports,
There you go.
all the analyst reports, all of the educators like Agnieszka and many more that come on to give you this education. And that's how easy it is to find. And again, I point out that Agnieszka gives you so much material for free on her website. Right here, if you look at it, she just has so much stuff for you to get. So there is no excuse in today's trading world to not be informed. I just wanted to point that out a little bit. There's so much information out there, but ultimately, do you think it's generational too? I noticed that, I'm an older guy, so I always say, these kids today, but I do think it is part of the participation trophy generation that is quick to point, to every outside indicator or outside influence that affected their decision. That is why it went wrong, as opposed to sort of looking within sometimes.
Yeah, because on one hand, it is definitely overwhelming when you have all this information coming at you, and like, how do you know what's the right decision, right?
Right.
So there is you need some kind of guidance to tell you like what is right to do, and that's exactly where this approach comes in. Like, are you gonna now take charge of what you are being fed and what information you are actually getting? Because yes, if you are open to everything, you will get overwhelmed. But now maybe you can say, you know what, I actually, for my strategy and for the way I'm trading, I need X, Y, and Z information. And I am going to actively search for where I can get that. And I'm going to see what really suits me the best. Like, what guy, how is he talking, right? Does he make sense to me? And then still take that information and remember that you have to process it and see if it makes sense to you, because in the end, nobody knows what's going to happen, right? So it has to make sense to you, because even if someone says something about the market is going to go up, right, or this is what's going to happen, nobody knows that. So you cannot then blame that person. Oh yeah, because that person, I trust that person, and now it's not happening. Well, it is also your responsibility that you gave the trust to that person, right?
Right. So how do we shift that perspective? Do you have some tips or guides or things we can work on, or, sort of markers to use to sort of shift that out of that victim's role and taking more responsibility for our own actions?
Yeah, I think first of all is to realize that you're not doing that you are actually doing that. And I promote compassion, like having the discipline to be having the compassion and discipline, so that you always go back to yourself. And the first step really to do it is sort of forgive yourself. I know it sounds maybe like, oh my God, what the big thing, forgive myself. But when you are making mistakes, usually people, like traders, but people don't easily forgive themselves for their mistakes.
Right. Like you said, we hold ourselves more responsible, and especially for traders, I feel we internalize it. And that's why we end up in this victim role, because we don't want to blame ourselves. We're not wrong.
Exactly. So that is what triggers that looking outside and say, oh, it wasn't my mistake, it was his fault because he said it. Oh, this report came out, it wasn't my mistake, it was the mistakes of the report, right? That, oh, the timing, bad timing. And so if you can forgive yourself and actually see yourself as a human being, like, okay, so I am okay to make mistakes. trading is teaching you that mistakes are okay. This is like one of the domains that actually allow you to make mistakes and still make money, right? So don't try to be more holy than, than holy Jesus, because you can make mistakes. It's okay. You don't have to be perfect. And taking that, really internalize it and embody it, like, it's okay if I'm not perfect. This is really the first step. Accept self-acceptance and building the self-compassion for yourself, to say, it's really okay if I make mistakes, which means I don't need to look for anyone to blame. I can take that responsibility and say, yeah, it was my mistake, and I'm going to learn from it and move forward. Because if you keep blaming other people, you're not learning from it. And that's why mistakes are happening.
I think you just hit on a big part of it is traders or successful traders that I have dealt with here. I notice they analyze what happened on winning trades, on losing trades. They're not afraid to go back, like you said. And maybe that's part of it, is overcoming that fear that maybe we are part of our own problem, is part of, what we're running into and why it is so hard. Is that, again, every successful trader I talk about will tell you what they did and what they did wrong and right with trades. And even the most successful of trades, we talk about it. You're lying to yourself if you say you bought the bottom and sold at the top, or vice versa, because only one person can buy that tick. So that's bottom line. And what it is, we live in a gray world, and sometimes how we look at that world, we make it a darker gray than it needs to be. And fair to say.
And that's also like that, the ego play, right? We try to lift ourselves up by pushing either other people down, or by finding a reason why we are not that bad, so that we feel good about ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that you say in that podcast that I found empowering was taking responsibility for your trades and taking responsibility for your actions as being a part of that sort of introspection that you need to find out if you are in this victim's role. Are you stuck in this cycle, and are you continuing in it? Is taking responsibility that you ultimately push that button and you make your trades.
Yeah. And I think that the self-acceptance and self-compassion plays a really huge role in here, because if you cannot allow yourself to make mistake, you are keep fighting with yourself, right?
And you lead to bigger losses. You can even take that a step further, is most people that do blow up their accounts, blow it up with one trade because they just refuse to take the loss.
Yeah. And that's a big problem. I mean, in my own journey, I had to learn to make mistakes. And I was really someone who, there was a lot at stake, because from my youth, I came out with the conviction that if I'm not perfect, I won't be loved. And it was living with me throughout my whole life. And that's big. It's really weighing a lot. And I can tell you, over the 6 years that I work with traders, that self-worth plays a huge factor in not succeeding in the market. Translating, making mistakes, not being perfect. This is all what's causing people to fight the market and fight themselves, and really stops them from that, using that much bigger potential that they have exactly in themselves, and making that connection with themselves to say, okay, you know what, I'm a human being, and I'm okay if I make mistakes. I'm not less if I do that.
Right. It's so important, because otherwise, in the world of trading, like you said, we hold on to things way too long. You set yourself up for failure if you don't take these steps, if you don't have self-awareness, if you don't, believe in yourself. How are you going to succeed? We've talked about it. I know so many traders that they have the best setups, their technical analysis is correct, their timing's correct. But once they hit that button, they can't wait the time it takes for the trade to play out, because, it isn't very often that you hit the button and it can just go straight up for you, or straight down, and whatever you're looking for. It is a windy road, and they have trouble staying on the road, and that is where I think I took away also from part of this is, that falls into that same mindset, in my opinion, the victim role. Is that because then they even make themselves their own victim of themselves, but they don't admit that that's the problem, that they're the problem.
Yeah.
They don't see that, and it's funny because like I said, this person put it in a group chat and 30 of us were all, saying the same thing back immediately. Do you not see
Yeah.
what you're doing? You've just nailed it.
Yeah.
You're right. You had the right setup. You had everything. Either you're going to trust your setup or you're not. And if you don't, we can't help you trust your own setup. That is something,
Right.
part of this is some of these things we have to overcome, within our own mind to do it. I could yes you to death in a meeting and say, you're right, I should definitely do that. And yes, I will tomorrow, I will trade differently. But if I don't really take a look inside myself and make those changes and get the night's sleep or meditate, like you said, and all the different things, journaling that helps you make the best trade decisions, if I don't really do it, it isn't going to work. And if I don't,
Yeah, and perception is our projection. So everything that we experience, whether it's from the market or in life, how we see things, is really we are projecting ourselves into the market. So whatever you say about the market is really says something about you. Whatever you say about other people says something about you. And when you start looking at it from that perspective, it's much easier to identify what's the real problem here.
Right. Absolutely. And that is the key, trying to identify it, shifting your perspective and taking responsibility for it, and then developing those habits that don't let you fall back in, or developing that self-awareness. Is there any tips you have on developing that self-awareness not to fall back into that victim role once you sort of do realize that it's within your mind?
Yeah, I think the best way that I can say start with is start observing what you are saying, start observing what you're thinking. So the journaling is, even if you're not a writer, record yourself if you want.
Yeah.
Record yourself, just put your phone on record and trade, and whatever is going to come out, talk to yourself, listen to it later, because there's a lot of things that when you start writing things, and I see it, for example, in the very simple things, like from my clients, when I ask them to fill in some kind of quiz or self-assessment, and then I will go through it, and I actually, from what they wrote, which is completely, like, it could be about the performance or it could be about the trading style, whatever they write, there's always insight about the pattern, about how they think. So for example, some kind of assumptions, just like things are going better, but I'm still losing.
Right.
My question is, so what is your expectation, that you're going to stop losing?
Right.
You know what I mean? Little things like that. It's like, what is it that you really expect from your progress, right? Because if you expect to stop losing, that's unrealistic. You will keep losing in trading. You just have to manage your losses.
Manage your losses, right? That's what we teach. Yeah, and that's a great point, is that asking yourself, as you're saying, what your expectations are will sometimes lead you to some of the answers that you're looking for when it comes to in this particular case of victim mindset. Is you'll hopefully see it coming out.
So one question that I can say, just when you ask that question to yourself, every time something happens, whether you have taken a loss, whether you have missed the trade or whatever, ask yourself, was I acting here in my best interest?
Right.
Because when you ask yourself this question, there will be a lot of things popping up, and then you will see, am I blaming someone for this, or am I saying, okay, no, this was actually the thing I did? Like, I like to ask people, what is it that you are lying about to yourself? What's the biggest lie that you are telling yourself right now?
Right.
In your trading, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of different things coming up, and when you really ask yourself and like be honest with yourself, being honest, integrity, in being in alignment with, this is the person that I want to embody. This is the type of trader I want to be. And then ask yourself every time you make a decision, am I in line with how I want to be here, who I want to be?
I mean, I can answer, for me, it's disciplined. I'm not disciplined enough at waiting for entries. I will sometimes just, like I say, leave too much on the table, so to speak, or get into a trade before I really wanted to. And I'm trying to learn that myself And I found a way a little bit as I'm trying to use cash secured puts to start my positions now, for certain things when it comes to like a wheel trade or longer term for covered calls. But like you said, it is, you got to ask yourself those questions. You got to ask goals. It's the first thing I talk when someone tells me they're interested in crypto trading, and I want to know X or Y. Ron saying he's guilty as charged also. Is I ask, well, what are your goals? Is this are you going to be a short-term trader? Are you going to be a long-term investor? What are you trying to do? And sometimes as traders, we lie to ourselves, right?
All the time. That's the whole thing, that you lie to yourself all the time. And now it's the only question is, what is the reason you are lying to yourself? What is it that you're trying to cover? Because when you ask yourself the question, like, why am I actually lying to myself? And you don't have to tell it to anyone, just to yourself. Yeah. You can discover what is it that is actually stopping you from making that leap. Because there is usually like this one big thing. There's something you're trying to avoid. There's something you fearing either to lose, or there is something that you're fearing you won't get. And usually just those two things, if you look at those fears, they will tell you, why are you fighting so hard? I like to say,
right. For me, it was excitement. I get so excited about what I want to do that I don't wait. I don't get the patience to wait for the setup to hit what I wanted it to hit. So I know mine. I got to work on it still.
Well, yes, the excitement. But if you dig deeper about it, and we are not going to do it here, I can assure you that there is something, that there is another version under this. Right. Because a lot of times we tell ourselves the story that is good and that is sounds to us like, oh, it's a positive story, right? I'm just excited, so I want to get in. So, but if you are really so excited about the trade that is gonna hopefully work out in your favor, right? You're like, oh, this is a really good setup. Now, you know that the highest probability is when you enter at the right time, because
I get FOMO. Timing. I mean, it's just another word of saying FOMO. My excitement.
So there's fear.
FOMO. Yeah, right. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. So you see, there's like even like how we package the information towards ourselves is very different than what's actually hiding under it. Right. And getting to the core of that, and this is why I teach and I help develop traders compassionate discipline, because yes, you need discipline as a trader, but not the kind that we are used to, the discipline that nobody wants and it feels like a chore and it's like a discipline, right? I don't want to be disciplined. Compassionate discipline is having that discipline to always choose in your best interest, to actually tell yourself, treat yourself with respect and say, you know what, I am going to wait. Yes, I am afraid, and I acknowledge that. I am afraid, but I'm going to wait because I know that this will be in my best interest. And yes, there are steps to get there. Absolutely. But they are so much more. It's much quicker than trying to discipline yourself and scolding yourself and putting yourself in a position where you actually feel terrible about yourself, demotivated, and maybe even burn out at some point. Sure. Because how much can you beat yourself up and still be excited about something?
Absolutely. No, that's for sure. That's what you see, is eventually that excitement turns to frustration and aggravation. And then you go from there. Then the point that really takes off. Then you go to a whole nother level of blaming. Yeah. Agnieszka, I know we have to get you out of here. You have appointments with your clients. Thank you so much for joining us. I think this was such a great session for people. I hope they'll take away what we're saying. Again, don't drive down the right and left lanes at 100 miles an hour through a snowstorm. See the road in front of you, which is the market. Play the market in front of you. And, again, keep in mind that your mindset and your well-being, quite honestly, is just as important as your trading wallet. So having someone like Agnieszka to talk to about these things and learn from is something I couldn't recommend more. Quasar Markets, thank you so much. And we'll see you back at 1 o'clock with Scott Bauer from Prosper Trading Academy. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much, Howard. Thank you, everyone.